Hey there, high vibrationers, and welcome back to Zen Dragon Healing. Since our last video, we decided we would call our subscribers high vibrationers for the simple reason that if you take in, assimilate, and practice the spiritual principles and concepts that we're going to be teaching over the course of our next, 1,000 videos maybe, you will raise your vibration to the highest level possible. Now, before we get going, I'd like you all to please take a moment. Relax yourselves, close your eyes, take a nice slow deep breath, and repeat after me. Grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, the Serenity Prayer teaches us a couple things. The first thing it teaches us is there are things that we can change. Now, the spiritually minded and those in pursuit of a higher vibration are automatically going to think, well, everything that can be changed is inwardly. I cannot change anything outwardly. Perhaps, perhaps not. We'll get back into that, though. The second thing that it teaches us is in order for us to make changes, we must acquire wisdom. Now, wisdom comes with experience and is not necessarily relative to time. You know, there are many people over the ages that were wise far beyond their years, simply because they had had the experiences that had granted them wisdom. Age isn't necessarily synonymous with wisdom, exactly, I guess is what I'm saying. The young can be wise, and the old can be foolish, but usually it's the young that's foolish and the old that are wise. Now, the Serenity Prayer, or mantra as I sometimes call it, has everything to do with today's video. As suggested in the title, today we're going to talk about letting shit go. Now, we're talking about actually letting shit go. Based on personal experiences and the observances that I've made over the years, I realized that perhaps more often than not, we don't really let things go. You know, perhaps we don't have an explosive emotional reaction to situations, circumstances, or environment. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're not letting things go. Now, I'm glad, of course, if you've gotten to a point in your journey where you're not having an explosive emotional reaction or a violent emotional outward reaction, then you've got a leg up on a whole lot of people. You keep doing, you just keep on walking your path. I'm very proud of you. However, if we're being inwardly disturbed and simply just not displaying it outwardly, that's not really letting it go. That's suppressing it, that's bottling up. Now, our emotional bodies have a capacity, very much like a balloon, or a glass of water, if you will. Now, if you blow a balloon up to the point that it's stretched as tight as it goes, and someone comes along and pops that balloon with a pen, you get a violent reaction. Well, this is what happens to us emotionally when we suppress things, when we don't process things, when we don't deal with things appropriately. You know, just for the sake of not having an outward explosive emotional reaction. Now, I would venture to say in most cases, you know, and I don't want to be too presumptuous, a lot of us avoid having that outward reaction because we don't want to be faced with confrontation. That's a subject for a whole nother video, but it plays into some of what we're going to be talking about here today. Now, if you're not sure whether or not you are really letting things go or simply suppressing them, take a moment and think about it. Is there an environment, is there a set of circumstances, situations, or people that often cause you an inward disturbance? I'm going to guess the answer is probably yes. If that be the case, sorry to say, you're not really letting things go. But hey, that's okay. You're watching this video. We're going to try to show you how to at least get started on actually letting things go. Now, I think I'll start with a story from my own personal experience. Years ago, I shared an apartment with a roommate. I wasn't in a position where I could afford a two-bedroom apartment on my own, so I had to have a roommate. Honestly, back then, I probably preferred living alone better because I've got what some might call a little bit of a character flaw, and that is neat freak. I'm a neat freak. I personally wouldn't identify myself as a neat freak, but it's part of my character that I have a really high standard for cleanliness and organization and neatness. If that makes me a neat freak, well, guilty as charged. Anyways, my first roommate had a habit of leaving dirty dishes in the sink, and I had a habit of getting upset about it. But you know what? I was on a spiritual path, so I wasn't gonna freak out about it. So what I would do, rather than talking with him about it or having an explosion over it, is I would passively aggressively wash his dishes, dry them, and put them away. And then later on, at some other point, I would vent to one of my friends or family members about how my roommate was a pig and left dirty dishes in the sink. Clearly, I wasn't letting shit go, right? Well, let me show you an example of the dangers of not really letting things go, of suppressing things and not dealing with them and getting them out. On one particular day, my roommate went to bed, left dishes in the sink after dinner. I'm sitting in the living room watching TV. I had observed that he had left the dishes in the sink and went to bed. And so I went about business as usual, passive aggressively cleaning up the dirty dishes to put them away. And as I was drying the plate, I simply snapped. Threw the dish across the house. It hit a wall, shattered everywhere. He comes running out. He's freaking out. I'm screaming at him. He grabs some clothes and he leaves. And the next day he moves out. Now I have 3 messes to clean up. You know, I had damaged that relationship, broke that dish, leaving a mess all over the place, which I had to literally clean up. And then I had a financial situation that I had rectified because, as I said, I couldn't afford this apartment all on my own. Well, I did repair the relationship. I did get the dish cleaned up and I bought a new dish to replace it. And I got a new roommate. But this put me in a unique situation to really take a look inwardly like I had never taken a look before. I had to ask myself, why did I have such an explosive emotional reaction? Well, what I dug up was fear. Spoiler alert, all of our adverse emotional reactions are really fear. Now, you kind of have to understand the mechanics of fear in order to deal with this properly and to really learn to let things go. So what I did was I dug deep down inside and I identified the fears. A couple of fears had come up. One, I had a fear of being taken advantage of. See, even though it wasn't my roommate's intent to take advantage of me, that was just kind of his character to leave dirty dishes in the sink. That's kind of just, you know, how he had done things, and he saw nothing wrong with that. I felt like I was being taken advantage of. I felt like I was being forced into servitude, I guess, if you will. It was probably a good way to explain the way I felt at the time. Another fear that came up was I had a fear that my house would just get overrun with dirtiness and filth. That was probably the more terrifying of the two, if I'm being honest. Well, I had to get to the root of these fears, so in some meditation and some journaling and a few hours of some diligent inward work, I got down to the root of my fears, traced them back to childhood, and I was able to start rewriting the narrative in my own belief system. As a result, no more explosive emotional reactions because of dirty dishes being left in the sink. And that's a real good thing because a lot of damage could be done there. Now, I did get a new roommate, and this gets into the changes outwardly, as I had mentioned earlier. I got a new roommate. Before he moves in, you know, I explained to him what happened with the old roommate. You know, I really don't like dirty dishes being left in the sink. I really like the place to remain clean, you know, so just pick up after yourself, wash your own dishes, put them away, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Everything went well for a while. And then one day, new roommates, running kind of late for work. He goes running out of the house and he brings some dirty dishes out of his bedroom and you know, just kind of sets them in the sink as he's running out, and I stopped him. What do you think happened? We had a normal conversation filled with love and tolerance while I explained to him that I'd really like if he would take the time, no matter what, to just clean the dishes. Well, he did. He stayed, cleaned his dishes. He went to start drying them and put them away, and I took over the task for him. He was able to make it to work on time, and there were never dirty dishes left in the sink again. In fact, he turned in to be one of the best roommates I'd ever had in my life, and also one of my best friends, so much to the point that when he moved out, I actually cried. I actually missed that guy. But I was happy for him. He got his own home, had a fiance, was moving on with his life. Man, keep going, brother. So this teaches us that while we might have or try to contain explosive emotional reactions, there's a couple things that we need to look at. One, what can we change? Is it environmentally? Is it circumstantially? Or is it something only within us? Or is it both? Well, simple fact of the matter is if there's a circumstance, an environment, or something that's going on around me that really needs to change, we can change that. But first I want to take a look inside. I want to look at what the internal agitator is. You see, the fact of the matter is that none of our emotions are triggered from external agitators. It's all done on the inside. It is only our perception of our ego filtered through our belief system that convinces us that you are the problem, that he is the problem, that this place is the problem. Albeit there may be problems with that person, with this place, absolutely 100% true in some cases. The fact that I'm inwardly disturbed says there's something inside of me that I need to take a look at. And this is always true. I know. Some of you might be listening to this right now and you're already getting agitated because sometimes there are people out there that are really a-holes. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? Another person's character isn't personal to me. How another person acts or what another person thinks or feels has absolutely nothing to do with me. If I stay closely to monitoring my own emotions and my own thoughts, that'll get me closer and closer to being constantly present in the moment, which is the only place where I can raise my vibration. So let's always step back, take a look inside. You know, if you're already at a point where you're not reacting emotionally adverse to situations that irritate you inwardly, you're halfway there. You're not causing harm. You're not creating damage. You're on the right path. Now it's time to start look inwardly. Stop suppressing. Start rewriting the narrative of your belief system, getting rid of those fears, mastering your existence. A really good way to start is with silent meditation, at least twice a day, 5 to 7 minutes. I believe that's what my last video was about. Video number 2 was a brief tutorial on silent meditation, the second most powerful way to raise your vibration, to raise your awareness. But it really has to be done, at least twice a day, at least 5 to 7 minutes. Really all we need is 30 seconds of perfect inward peace. But sometimes it takes 5 to 7 minutes or even more to get that 30 seconds. But keep practicing, keep trying, keep doing it. It'll get easier and easier. Your vibration will raise higher and higher. Your awareness will grow greater and greater. And as that awareness grows greater and greater, and you're more and more in the present moment, you can take those looks inwardly. You can rewrite that belief system. You can free yourself from emotional suffering, which is always self-imposed, by the way. Never is it other-imposed. Just keep that in mind. I live by a very simple concept. I've been using this concept for about a decade now, and it's been setting me free left and right. And that is every single one of my problems are of my own design. Every single one of them. If you work from that concept, and every time you're upset, every time you're disturbed, every time you're in emotional turmoil, you take a look inwardly, get down to the root of that fear, and cut that root out, you're going to grow by leaps and bounds. And sometimes it might happen overnight. You, the people around you, everyone's going to be amazed if we just keep looking inward, keep changing first what's inward, and then make the external changes from a position of love and tolerance. That's important. Before we address an actual, literal, real-life issue with someone, with a situation, or with our environment, we need to first look inward and approach it with love and tolerance. We want to remove fear from the equation, because the first thing that happens when we go to someone with anger to express our views or our feelings is they put their defenses up, and communication is cut in half. So we don't want to do that. We want to communicate. We want to communicate clearly. We want to communicate from an emotionally positive perspective. And if we do that, guaranteed, we're going to love the results. All right, high vibrationers, keep on trucking on, keep raising your vibration, hit that subscribe button, share this video. Let's get some real positive vibrations and energy out there into the world. And one person at a time, we can make the world a better place for us all to live. Love you guys.